perhaps it is as simple as saying Texas is a problem, and not just because they thumped Michigan. We all knew they were going to thump Michigan. We knew they were going to thump Michigan from the moment that Jim Harbaugh decided to go to the NFL. We knew they were going to thump Michigan from the moment that J.J. McCarthy entered the NFL draft. We knew they were going to thump Michigan when we saw that entire offensive line make it to the NFL, and the only things that they really had returning for them were on the defensive side in Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham and Will Johnson, and an unproven commodity at tailback. We knew this. This is not new. What is interesting to think about with Texas is what I've been saying for some time. They feel like 2017 Georgia right now. They are on the precipice of reaching the pinnacle of the sport. And in many respects, their ascendancy is mirroring what Michigan's was without the sign stealing. Okay? So we got Texas making the college football playoff for the first time ever last year. And we've got Texas winning a Big 12 championship for the first time since 2009. And we've got a quarterback in Quinn Ewers who is unflappable both on the field and off the field. At a time when many are asking, what about Arch Manning? This is 2022 and this is 2023. Quinn Ewers is going, I want him to succeed. I want Arch to be great. I want Arch to be Arch. While Steve Sarkisian is also saying, look, Arch is the future of Texas. We all know that. The present right now is Quinn Ewers. And that's such a presence that Malik Murphy transferred to Duke, even though he was starting games when Quinn Ewers was out due to injury. And now it seems that the Achilles heel for Texas is, for the most part, been solved. We still got a lot of football left to play. But Ewers is still not a quarterback that has finished an entire season without missing a game due to injury. A lot of that comes back to your pass protection. A lot of that comes back to how comfortable you are getting rid of the ball and how quickly you can do that. He looked comfortable and smart getting rid of the ball against Michigan, and they had an outstanding strategy. You know, when Kenneth Grant is on the field, Mason Graham is on the field, they're not running at the inside of that. Nobody wants those tackles inside. Those are two NFL defensive tackles. Why would you want to run on them, A, at any time, and B, when you know that you have speed on the edge? You have lightning 7.5 yards deep in Jaden Blue. You've got Ryan Wingo who can run into rounds. You've got dudes that can take the top off the defense like Jonte Cook. You've got guys that you know have speed that, frankly, can run by Will Johnson when necessary. So when you are getting a blow and you're trying to rotate in, they acknowledged the personnel, they saw the personnel, and Steve Sarkisian went straight at them, putting in another tight end, going with some big personnel. It was fun to see. It really was. But I think that if Quinn Ewers is going to win the Heisman Trophy, he ain't winning against Michigan. For all the reasons that I just told you about Michigan. It's less about Texas and more about Michigan. This is not the national championship team that we saw in 2023. Far from it. They are developing. They're still having to figure out what's going on at quarterback, and they're still trying to figure out what turns Donovan Edwards on if you're not in the postseason or wearing an Ohio State jersey. They're still figuring out who else they can rely on at the receiver position. I think it's Samaj Morgan. I think it's Tyler Moore, but for the most part, it's just been Colston Loveland, right? We're also getting to see Sharon Moore deal with a loss for the first time as a head coach. Because remember, as an acting head coach, he never lost. He was undefeated along with Michigan. And now he has a loss on national television against a team expected to make the college football playoff. Okay, how do you bounce back? What do you do against Arkansas State as you prepare to take on what I think is the second best team in the Big Ten right now in USC in just a couple of weeks? But if Quinn Ewers is going to win the Heisman Trophy, he's going to do it in 3 games. Okay? The first game will be OU Texas on October 12th. This is not necessarily because Oklahoma has demonstrated themselves to be a college football playoff team. You've seen them. I've seen them. OU is a long way away from playing in the college football playoff based on what we have seen against Temple and against Houston, and it ain't been good. I've done that segment. You can watch that segment. But the reason that Oklahoma is going to be one of those games that you get to make your Heisman declaration on is, A, Oklahoma's coming off of a 10-win season, unlike last year when they were coming off of a 6-7 year. So people are already giving them the benefit of the doubt. If they make it past Tulane and they beat Tennessee, there is a great opportunity that Oklahoma's a top 10 team by the time they get to that game. But let's assume you beat Tulane, you lose to Tennessee, which is in the realm of possibility. It is still OU Texas. And it is still a game that Quinn Ewers lost last year on the way to the college football playoff. It is the bugaboo. We hate them and they hate us. We're always going to show up. We're always going to feel like we got a shot, as long as the quarterback ain't hurt, because 2022 wasn't no fun for nobody down here. But you get my point here. Jackson Arnold is going to have to show the guy that we all think him to be in that game. And if you get a ball game where Quinn Ewers is picking Oklahoma's defense apart, which, by the way, is the strength of the football team right now, you're going to get more purveyors of the sport going, okay, Quinn Ewers has got a lot to him, especially as Alabama and Georgia are having to fight each other in that week 5, right? We're talking about Wisconsin, the bye week, and then we got Alabama, Georgia. The next game that Quinn Ewers would have to show out in is the following week when they get to host Georgia. You go from Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl to Georgia at DKR. And if you knock off number 1 Georgia, assuming they are still number 1 Georgia at that time, you are the front runner. It is going to be your Heisman Trophy to lose because you play the most important position on the best team in the sport. Short of a Jaden Daniels-like experience happening, and I just don't see that one from anybody, not yet. I mean, short of Ashton Jeanty running for 3,000 yards, I just don't see that one happening. But you are able to double up OU and Georgia in the month of October, and you're still undefeated. It is not just going to be your Heisman to lose. It's going to be your national championship to lose. That is what the expectation will be. But there's still one more game that he would have to win to sew up the Heisman Trophy, and it is the SEC championship game. I don't believe that Quinn Ewers can walk into the SEC title game undefeated, get bounced with an L, and still win the Heisman Trophy, given what his stat line will show. And you know, like I know, that there are a lot of stupid Heisman voters who will only look at the stat line or will only watch the SEC championship game. I genuinely believe that many Heisman voters should not have a damn vote. They don't care. They don't take it seriously. They are not watching as much football as being played. That said, I watched Kyler Murray take the Heisman Trophy out from under Tua Tagovailoa. And the reason I got to see that is Jalen Hurts had to come in to save them in the SEC championship game, which did not bode well for Tua because you're not good enough to take this over the line. And then Kyler Murray played one of the games of his life against Texas in a Big 12 championship game. They made it that simple. Kyler elevated, Tua did not. Kyler wins the Heisman Trophy. And anybody that is watching that 2018 season will tell you Tua looked like the best player. Yeah, he had some issues. But Kyler winning that Heisman Trophy was really about what Kyler was able to do in the postseason. As the games were in the balance in November, and as he was getting into the Big 12 championship, vaulting into the college football playoff with that win, that's how you win the Heisman Trophy. I could see a similar thing happening to Quinn Ewers if they make the SEC championship game and say he gets knocked out. If they got to go to Arch Manning. Or if he doesn't play well. And this is not a player who has thrown for 300 yards in a game yet. That's a thing that many Heisman voters seem to care about. I don't. He went for 246 against Michigan. He went for 260 against Colorado State. And they have scored at least 31 points in both games. They'll likely score 35 against San Antonio. And I think Texas San Antonio is a good football team. But it's going to need Quinn to have Heisman moments. And those Heisman moments are when you're on national television against brand name teams. They are not against Colorado State. They are not against UTSA. And they are not against a Michigan team that I'm not sure is going to make it through the rest of the season as a top 25 program. They're going to be against your rivals. They're going to be against teams that we know are getting up because they hate you, like Oklahoma, like Texas A&M. You do those things. You are able to show out against Oklahoma, Georgia, A&M, SEC championship game. It's going to be his Heisman Trophy. And in that way, he will be able to do what Vince Young could not. And that is win the Heisman Trophy and win the national championship. I'm telling y'all, if that comes to pass, it might be Texas's world we're living in for quite some time, because Texas has the feel, again, of a Georgia team on the come up, of an Alabama team on the come up with Nick Saban, who's still the head coach. If you like the channel, please subscribe. We are 104,000 strong, and we are getting stronger every day. I'm doing live shows at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays and on Tuesdays, and at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturdays, all during the fall. We're going to talk ball.